10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And we are live. Good evening, Kat.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm so well, thank you.
Time zones here. I'm 5 p.m. You're midnight.
Best time of the day.
So
Woohoo!
glad that you're a night owl like I am.
I believe that's something that we discussed in Jersey. Remember, we had this lovely conversation about how you and I like to stay up late.
Yes, I would much rather do my work through the night and stay and sleep late than the opposite. And my dear friend and social media manager, Ace, she's out in California and she's the opposite. She would, she's in bed by 10 and up by 5, so we'll meet at like 11 o'clock my time and I've been up 1 hour and she's been up like 3 hours. What is wrong with this picture? This would not work if we were on different coasts.
It works. Oh my goodness. Yeah, no, it's so lovely, what I like about working at night is it's quiet. The whole world is sleeping, so I get to arrange my thoughts and get so much done, because in the day really everything's just going like this. It's so busy, and the phone keeps ringing and people are at the door, so I think I'll always be a night owl.
And I agree, because also as a mom, we're both moms, and I find it very difficult to like switch focus from mom mode to creative mode. For me, I have to really schedule my work when they're asleep or when they're not here, when they're with their dad. So yeah, so it all works out. If we were all the same, it'd be boring, right?
Exactly. At the end of the day, we make it work, like you said, and that's the most important thing.
But it does, require some level of sovereignty in your business, or to make those own hours. Because I feel there were many years, especially in my physical therapy career, where I had to be at the hospital 8 a.m. whether I liked it or not. So
it's early.
Exactly. So
yeah.
I control my schedule now. It's a blessing.
Oh, that's the best thing about being an entrepreneur. We get to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful every day that I wake up, that I'm not in the corporate space anymore, in that sense, full time working for a corporate company, because it's great when you can really format your own hours. And we've met through a synchronicity, and we started speaking about magic and synchronicity in the world. And of course, you are here, you are expert on these topics. So I'm going to hand over to you. We are very excited to go into this live with you to learn more.
Yeah, so we did mention yesterday in our conversation that you and I met, as you said, through synchronicity, and I can just recap that. This was back in January. I had dropped off my fiance from a procedure that's known as KAP, which stands for ketamine assisted psychotherapy. I felt a strong impulse to leave to go to the hotel where I was going to meet a mutual friend of ours. And as I was waiting for him, I was sitting and I heard Juanita interviewing a man who happened to have my son's name, and what they said really resonated with me. And I approached Juanita and she told me her name was Juanita Kapp, K-A-P-P. And I was just blown away, right? Because I mean, and I'm still blown away, because I've been experiencing synchronicity, or what I'm more plainly calling magic, for about 5 years now, right? Since 2018, synchronicity has become a very prominent part of my life. And it started out more, and I'm going to give multiple examples today. And it started out more with it being occasional, not, but what I mean is maybe twice a week, I would really see something, and some of the examples will highlight what I mean. That really just blew my mind, where it was just this confirmation for me that there's some force at play much more intelligent than any human that's ever walked the earth. Right? I mean, that this force can orchestrate these, synchronous moments, right? And most people would call synchronicity coincidence, right? That's what most people call coincidence. And I, for many, many years of my life, really until I was 38 or whatever it was, would have called it coincidence. For example, my ex-husband and I met. I was an atheist at the time, and I was dating a man from the University of Pennsylvania who was going to grad school there, and his name was Matt. And one day I was in a bar, and there was a woman who was dating one of his friends, and she was, I would say, flirtatious with me, right? I'm now with a woman, so maybe there was foreshadowing there. And she made a comment once, and she said, "You know what?" I was Kathleen at the time. I'm the kind of girl that guys date, but you're the kind of girl that guys marry. And I thought that was just an interesting comment, a little self-deprecating on her part. But I said thank you, and I never really thought about it again until I broke up with that man. I started dating another man who had gone to the University of Pennsylvania, whose name was Matt, same name. And he was, eventually talking about our dating history, and he's talking about his ex-girlfriend, and he's using the same name. It was a little bit of a unique name as this woman I had known. So I was like, well, I knew a woman with that name from the University of Pennsylvania. And sure enough, it was his ex-girlfriend. So a total stranger at the time to me had essentially come up and said, I'm the kind of girl that guys date. You're the kind of girl guys marry. And within a few months, I had met her ex-boyfriend and I married him.
My goodness.
And
all the nights out there.
And that's a story I told is like, what a coincidence, right? What are the chances? So I had rendezvous with coincidence that were pretty stunning, but and never at one point did I think that was anything more than two incidences that were really, cool, but I wasn't thinking too much into it, And then when I went through the process of, starting with intuitive eating and then through yoga training and then DBT, which is also mindfulness based, and opening myself up to Reiki and the spiritual awakening that I'm going to describe in more detail today, I had started to notice some really strange things, right? Where, like The Wizard of Oz is my favorite movie. And it would seem to be, it would just come up everywhere. Like my ex-husband and I were walking in a museum once, and we had been in that museum for at least an hour and a half. And we had been meandering wherever our hearts told us to. And at one point, the moment I passed one of the tour guides, he said, has anyone seen the 1939 classic Wizard of Oz? And I'm, so it was like the moment it would happen, as like that would get my attention. And or a group of women teenagers would pass me and they would be saying, we're off to see the wizard. And, there were just things that, like, yes, I could dismiss it as coincidence, but it was really starting to get my attention.
Yeah.
And then the day that I call the day of my spiritual awakening, one of the most memorable days of my life, was November 7th, 2018. And not only did I go in there, even though I was a yoga teacher at that point and had been exposed to a little bit more, yoga is an inherently spiritual practice, but I wasn't necessarily viewing it as such. It was just making me feel better, and I was doing what was making me feel better, right? I wasn't questioning that. So I went into my yoga studio at the time, completely atheistic. The only reason I even bought a ticket for this mediumship workshop is because I thought it was really messed up and that this man would accept money to lie, to do something that's not possible, right?
Yeah.
So I bought my $40 ticket, kind of figuring I'm a smart chick and I'll figure out his tricks. And worst case scenario, my dad has passed away along with many other people. So, I guess I was a little curious. And I sat in the room, and when he first touched my hand, he had mentioned that he thought I should do Reiki. And I was like, no, that's not real. I'm a physical therapist and a yoga teacher. He's like, no, you're a healer. I believe you could do what I do. And, so I was a little intrigued, and I sat down on the yoga mat, And his assistant came into the room and said, Mitch is going to pray to the angels and he'll come in and he'll channel for you. And I rolled my eyes because I hadn't heard the term angel since I had given up Catholicism when I was 21 years old, right? And at that point, I mean, truly, I was mad at this God if he existed. I mean, I had so much suffering and trauma in my life and death in my life at that, even to that point, that I wasn't feeling like I was being guided or protected or anything that this God supposedly was going to do for me. So so when she mentioned angels, I was pretty much, thought this was ridiculous. And then, but as soon as he stepped into the room, it was the first and not the last time that I felt what I now know to be my crown chakra open, and a like shower of intense energy came through my entire body, to the point where with 20 witnesses, I was crying, I was in fetal position, I was breathing through these really intense sensations that I had no idea I'd never felt before. I had no idea what was happening. I was a total skeptic. And then when he would walk toward me, I'd get really hot. And when he'd walk away from me, I'd get really cold. And then he told a really relatable story about being addicted to drugs for a long time and being considered missing by his family because he was in such a bad spot. And then two mediums coming across his path and telling him, hold on, you're special. You're going to understand your gifts soon. And he had a rapid spiritual awakening. And then for me and the other 19 people in the room, he then channeled absolutely accurate information that was so accurate for me and clearly others around me, that I left there without a shadow of a doubt that not only was I wrong about this whole atheism thing, meaning that I believe that I am just a human walking the earth for one lifetime, and that's, and life is hard and largely miserable, at least in the circles I was in. And, and I'd kind of come to this grim acceptance of that, and so not only was my mind blown that I was wrong, that there's way more to this reality than I can see, but that my dad was still literally present with me, meaning that he gave me details of my life over the last 18 years that my dad wasn't present for. I thought, right? So it was like, how could my father know that if he's dead? Right? And what I've really come to understand is there is no such thing as death, right? There's eternal life. We live lives, we learn lessons, we grow, we expand, we leave these physical bodies, but energy never dies. We even know that from our earthly physics, standpoint. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. And the energy of that soul does live on and is present and, pointedly interested in the lives of the people they loved. And, our loved ones are not sitting on a cloud waiting for us to die. They're right here, right now, waiting for us to wake up to that reality and live, and stop living your life for a billionaire corporation that doesn't give a crap about you, or just doing the things, that your parents did, even though they weren't effective parenting techniques for you, right? I mean, we tend to do what we're told because the society or the matrix, especially the religious matrix, has really done a great sales job of follow these exact rules or you're going to hell, right? So it's this very fear-based indoctrination, right? Right. So, so that's where I was coming from. So to say I was mind blown would be an understatement, right? So I really believed in Mitch's gift. His name is Mitchat. He is fantastic. I really believed in his gift. And while he still lived in New Jersey, he doesn't anymore. I had the pleasure of then doing multiple personal readings with him in which, the messages were even more pointedly, for me. So there were then a few examples that I'll give of how I took this like mind-blowing experience, right? And started then exploring whether this was true for me, or whether I could tap into this myself, or like he said I could do this, right? You know, he said I could do what he does. So maybe if I took this as seriously as I did every other, like my physical therapy career, right? I can really tap into a gift I didn't know that I could even, you know, search for, much less have. So, so the first time he came to my house, he gave me, this was early December, and he gave me a few details. One was that there was I would meet someone named Ed, right? He said, is there anyone that you know named Ed or Edgar? And I said, no, you know, and he said, you're gonna make sure you hold on to that name. It's important. He also said, I see you taking place in a spiritual ceremony in the near future. And I said, well, you know, I'm going to Tulum, Mexico for my 40th birthday with some yoga friends on a retreat, but, you know, I don't know anything about the itinerary. And he said, okay, hold on to that detail. That's going to be important. So the very next day, I went to my medicine dispensary, which is a cannabis dispensary. And I was standing in line behind this man, and he started talking to me, and he was inspiring, and he was, you know, he had been through a lot of tough things and he had overcome them, and he was writing a book. We were on the line for a while, so you know, we had time to chat. And I was telling him about, you know, my work with mental health and trying to find alternative ways besides pharmaceuticals and alcohol, which were the only ways I managed before. And he said, oh, I want to be on your email list. So I said, okay, great. What's your name? And he said, Ed. And it blew my mind instantly, because just the day before, Mitch had told me that name would be important. And then, so on the way home, I was, you know, just reliving the magic of that moment. And I thought to myself, you know, I can't wait to go home and tell my husband at the time, who, you know, was never impressed. I'll spoil it for you. He didn't believe in any of this. It's a big part of the reason we're no longer together. And I just thought to myself, you know, I wonder how I would physically describe him. And the person that came to mind was an American named Lin-Manuel Miranda, right? Who he wrote Hamilton, which is one of the best plays I've ever seen. It's phenomenal. And so I thought, you know, he kind of looked like Lin-Manuel Miranda. And in that instant, my phone pinged. And I looked at it and it said, Lin-Manuel Miranda is bringing his show Hamilton to Puerto Rico. And I mean, again, instant, like the fact that the thought came and then the confirmation came, like that was really the first time I think that I knew something was really big here, right? And I was on, you know, I was just very hungry for more, right? So another time I met with Mitch, he told me to remember the word joy and bluebirds, right? So I went off, I literally left that appointment. I went to teach a yoga class, and a woman I didn't know walked up to me to introduce herself, and her name was Joy. And, you know, I mean, like, it didn't take long for the universe to deliver, right? It was never a long time for the universe to say, like, oh, here you go. Here's your number, right?
There we go. Yeah.
But that was instant. But this was even cooler. About weeks later, I'm talking, I'm so sorry. I didn't even finish the other part of that story. At that retreat that I wound up going on was in Tulum, Mexico. There was 7 weeks between when Mitch told me this and then when I went to Tulum, Mexico. And not only was the first day of the itinerary participating in a Mayan sweat lodge ceremony, the spiritual ceremony that he alluded to, but when we arrived, the shaman's name was Edgar. And so he had mentioned both Ed and Edgar. So it was, you know, mind-blowing, right? So now I've gotten this tidbit about Joy and bluebirds. So I meet Joy. Joy happens to be the mother of a good friend of mine who I met in Tulum, by the way. Her name was Amy. And Amy's also a yoga teacher. So weeks later, I said I returned the favor and I went to Amy's yoga class. And I was practicing next to her mother, Joy. And afterwards, we decided to sit on the gym floor and just chat for about an hour. We were just having a really nice time. And at the end of it, Joy says to her daughter, oh, Amy, you got to see what my friend sent me. It's the cutest thing. And she pulls out of her purse a little bluebird.
Oh my goodness.
She said, oh, my friend, my friend thought it was such a nice trinket and she sent it to me. And I was stunned. But then I asked to see it. And even on the tag, it said bluebird of happiness.
Wow.
Right.
My
So, I
goodness.
mean, it just kept building. The momentum of it kept building. And, at the time, these were incidents that happened weeks apart and took weeks maybe to confirm, but they were confirmed. Right. And it stunned me that, because prior to having the more one-on-one sessions with
Yeah.
Mitch, I had, really been mind blown that these beings that we knew as, in the physical world, who had crossed over were aware of us, right? And could give us specific detail. But how does this man look into the future, right? How does he know what's going to happen weeks before it does, right? And
Wow.
I think I'll save that explanation for Thursday. I'll go a little bit more into like demystifying how that's even possible, right? Because I too
Yeah.
believe that, I understand it from a much broader perspective. So we'll save that for Thursday. But but continuing on with the magic, so I want to make sure I deliver on my promise, right? Then there was a situation where, so at this point, like I said, my ex-husband was very close-minded to all of this. He really, didn't think it was anything important. And so, in fact, when I told him about the bluebirds of happiness, he said, well, if this is real, then I shouldn't need some medium to tell me what to ask for. I should be able to ask the universe. So he said out loud, if this is real, universe, send me a red bird. In the next 24 hours, I want to see a red bird. So I literally was like, please, universe, please send us some red birds. So the next day I went to go teach a yoga class with a good friend of mine. We were co-teaching, and it was a workshop. And one of her aunts had come, and her aunt tragically had lost her son just a week prior, her 49-year-old son. And so it was devastating. And we had invited her to the workshop free of charge, just give her some rest and relaxation. And it was right around Thanksgiving. So my my friend said, or there was a little chalkboard in the bathroom that invited you to write down things you're grateful for. So
Oh,
after the workshop, as I looked on the board, I could see some things had been added, and one thing on there was cardinal. And
cardinal.
when I looked at it, I was like, cardinal's a red bird. Why does it say cardinal there? That doesn't even make sense. What are you grateful for? Cardinal, right? So I asked my friend, did she know what that meant? She said, yeah, my Aunt Mickey, ever since Patrick died, every morning a cardinal has appeared at her window and is, like tapping on it. So she's convinced that it's Patrick. And I was like, I am too, right? Like, that's really cool. So already I got that confirmation of a red bird, right? From that. And then I was driving, doing another errand, and I went to go drop something off again at Maria's house, and I'm standing there talking to her, and there's a flag above her head with 2 red birds on it. And I'm like, Maria, why is that there? And she's like, oh yeah, I never thought about that. But my
Yeah.
aunt's gonna think that I put that up for Patrick, but it's been there for a long time. I mean, I didn't even think that I had that there. And
Yeah.
then I went home, and I was so excited, right, to tell my ex-husband, like, guess what I saw 2 of today, or
Yeah.
symbolically. And it is important to note that it wasn't 2 literal red birds, right? Because the universe is going to find a way to deliver to you as cleverly as it can, right? So you have to be open-minded that what you're asking for might be delivered in a way you didn't expect. So, but
Mhm.
then I walk in my house and I'm so excited. And my younger son was very little. He was maybe 5, 4 or 5. And he comes up the stairs right away and he's talking to me. And my ex comes upstairs from the basement and he says, okay, where's red bird you said, that you wanted to tell me about. And Charlie hears him and he says, "Oh, mommy, I forgot to tell you, I saw a red bird outside the window today."
Oh my
And,
goodness.
and the moment that happened, I felt that same feeling,
Shock.
like the crown chakra opened up and this really intense energy came through. And it was honestly enough for even my ex-husband to like that night be like, "Okay, that's kind of weird," but by the next day he's like, "Well, I didn't see the red bird, and you and Charlie saw it, and because you didn't leave the house, dude." Right. And also, notably, at that time I was open-minded to it, I was looking for it, I was expecting it, and I wasn't putting doubt, right? I knew at that point the universe could deliver on that. And all children, as I said, he was super young and he's still very aware, are really pure channels of spirit, right? Children are really intuitive and really connected to that intuitive knowing or that intuitive impulse. You can go back yesterday at our conversation yesterday, and we talked a lot about what your intuition feels like, right? It's just that impulse that you have, or that you want to do, or that inspiration you have that you would normally follow unless you talked yourself out of it. Right? Like, so, and I don't know a single child that's ever started a tantrum and been like, "You know what? I'm being rude. Never mind." Right? Like, kids just express, right? That's what they do. They're just purely themselves, right? Like, they say what they want to say. They don't care how it sounds. They express how they feel. They don't think it's wrong, it's not. And until they receive the message, and many of us, me included, do, that emotions are bad, or that children should be seen or not heard was a popular terminology in my youth. Unless we do that crappy thing to kids, then kids are extremely intuitive and extremely connected. I even have an example of, I was standing on a beach last summer with my fiance, and she and I were just, appreciating the view. And these two boys, young boys, were standing next to us, and they were talking about, dinosaurs, right? Like, I mean, the whole conversation was about dinosaurs between these little boys. And I just, in my head, had a thought about trucks. Like, I don't really remember the thought. I just remember having this thought about trucks. And the instant I had that thought, one of the boys started talking about a truck, and it's that awareness that we are really all one. We are really all connected. And anyone in your sphere because the law of attraction is very, very real, right? And the law of attraction is as real as gravity, right? It's working on you as faithfully as gravity. And what the law of attraction is responding to is your thoughts. And when you are in proximity to somebody, it's literally because you're on the similar vibrational level. Like, the analogy I'll use is that you can't hear what's on 106.7 if you're tuned into 99.9.
True.
You have to tune your frequency to what you want to hear, and you're not going to hear what's on any of those channels. So yeah, in a much more sophisticated sense, we kind of are these radio signal, these bodies of ours are radio receivers, where we're picking up on the energies of our environment. And that does mean that, at the same time, where I can clearly be aligning with or being matched up with children or other people who are clearly also very intuitive and very tapped into that knowing, just as when I'm around a bunch of people who are being really grumpy and mad, I know that I'm one of them too. Right? Like, I wouldn't be with this person if I wasn't on their vibrational level. So you really do have to take accountability for how you're feeling, right? And how you're vibrating, and stop asking other people to change, and change yourself, right? 'Cause you're the only one you are capable of changing, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. I love what you just mentioned. That's true. Absolutely. Talking about birds and bringing the birds through to what you just said. They always say birds of a feather flock together. That's all energy related, all the things that we've learned. And magic is there. But if you are not open to receiving that magic, if you're not open to believe, it's not going to happen.
Right.
Walt Disney said, if you can dream it, you can do it. If you believe, then a lot of things open up for you. And yes, we also grew up in those years. You are seen, you are not heard.
Right.
And that really pushes down that awareness that you can have. So I raise my children in a different fashion. Of course, they are, always acting in respect, and they always have good manners. But I've taught them since they were small, say what you feel. Express what you feel. Don't keep it inside. And I believe that our awareness of magic out there in the universe starts with an awareness of ourselves. If I'm in tune with myself, it's easier for me to be in tune with others that are in the same energy level, and it's easier for me to be in tune with the universe. And the moment that I'm in tune with myself and I'm in tune with the universe, the universe just keeps producing. That's what the universe loves to do. What does it do? It creates daily. So, and then our, imaginations expand and our plans prosper because we are in tune, like you've mentioned. And it's not something mystical or difficult. You just need to be open-minded about it, to be able to receive all those blessings. So I love the things that you've shared. Some people will, even maybe if your ex-husband had seen that physical red bird in front of him, I guess he still would have found a way to go around it and say, some people are just like that. They're not open to that. But I mean, we love them as well, but we don't function on the same frequencies as they do.
Yeah, I mean, it's taken me a long time to, let go of anger around that situation. But at this stage of my, my life, I understand that even the people who, aren't awakening to this truth and never will in this lifetime are playing an absolutely essential role for all of us, right? We are, and it strikes me that what we're talking about might be, this might be the very first time anyone has ever heard anything like this, right? Or this might be, the 10th or 12th or, 20th time that you've kind of read or heard about this in it, like, because this has been being talked about for centuries. I mean, there's multiple cultures and who've always known this information. Like, a big part of the reason that this isn't well known in the United States and the developed world is because of colonization, right? We have, we all know that what happened in the majority of the world, and the fact that there was mass genocide, right, of native and indigenous people who held centuries and millennia of wisdom, right, around astrology and around energy and the moon cycles. I mean, the fact that people can laugh at the fact that the moon does in fact affect us and affect our world is crazy to me, when it's well accepted that the moon, it controls the tides of the ocean. Right?
They'll believe that,
We're 80% water. So why do you think that little old you isn't being affected by these energies? It's absurd, honestly, right? There's such a thing as willful ignorance, right? And it happens when people, and I can really sympathize with this because I had to collapse my entire former belief system. I had to really let go, not just of my marriage, but most of the close relationships, because they were built at a time where I was in a much lower vibrational place and I had a lot less self-worth, and I allowed people to treat me poorly, right? And I've found that most people would rather let a relationship go than really face their own shadows, really go and do their own inner work, because it's just not possible for some people, and it's also not even preferred by a lot of people, so we just have to let everyone be where they are, right? But that's also that also comes with the acceptance that not everyone thinks that way. And there's a huge, huge population on the planet and growing that is embracing law of attraction, is utilizing these principles because they work, right? And, when you read Think and Grow Rich is a pretty popular book that people
Yes.
know about. That was written in the, 20s, I believe. I mean, I'll be honest, the some of the language in there is, overtly racist. I mean, it was just written in a different time. And everything he's talking about is in absolute alignment with law of attraction, right? And and The Secret was very, very popular in the 90s, both the documentary and the book. And I distinctly have a memory of my ex-husband scoffing at it. Like when I mentioned, like, oh, have you ever heard of law of attraction? Like, oh, you mean The Secret? With like this obvious bias, right? That anyone who believed that must be an idiot, So, so I know all the reasons that I was kept from, even exploring these
Awakening.
things, right? And I'm so grateful that, I mean, for me, it took going literally into a suicidal crisis in 2017 for me to explore other options when it came to managing my mental health. But, but it doesn't have to come to that, right? Like you could be listening to me right now, hear the details I just shared and be like, wow, there is no way that was a coincidence, right? And the very same force, we are all one. Maybe I'll go into more detail next time about, I can share even more examples of how I really came to know that we are all of the same energy. And this, you mentioned we're creators. That's even literally a name we use for source, right? Whether you call it God, whether you call it source, whether you call it the universe, whether you call it the creator, right? We are all of that energy. We're all natural creators, and we're creating with our thoughts, and the law of attraction is co-creating with us, right? And we're talking about the same energy that keeps our planet spinning in its orbit in perfect proximity to other planets, right? Not a single person on earth can be like, oh, I could do that job. Right? Like, so I don't care if your last name's Einstein, right? Like no human that has ever walked the earth has ever had that power or that capability. So maybe just like we don't need, a human's help to keep the oceans running or to make your blood pump through your body, right? It is really it's lovely to surrender to the idea that you're being guided by something much greater than you. Thank goodness, right? Because the majority of humans on earth aren't super intelligent. So I'm really glad that there's a force much more intelligent than any of us running the show, right? So
I love that. I love everything that you've shared, and it's so true. And there are most probably, like you've mentioned, people in the audience that have never been exposed to this kind of knowledge. And I would encourage them to go and read up about it.
yeah.
And I've always, over the years, in the religious spaces that I've moved, I've always said to everyone that I've ministered to, stop saying religion is different from energy and stop putting things in boxes. It's all connected, it's all integrated. Maybe sometimes we just have different names for them, or for the things or the topics or the themes that we are discussing, but it all comes down to the same thing. None of us can wake up tomorrow morning and say, oops, the universe forgot to turn on the sun, or to mentioned that in one of our lives. Thank God there is a higher power doing that. And it's that higher power, that divine source, that is creating these synchronicities. Now, if that's not a revelation, I don't know what is. I mean, I think someone in the audience this evening is sitting and thinking, my goodness, this and this happened, and that maybe was not a coincidence. So I would
truly don't think there's any such thing. There's divine timing, and it's never wrong, right? And and one of the biggest misconceptions, I think, is that if you're on a spiritual path or on earth in general, that life is supposed to be problem free, right? Like it works, right? We come down here to experience sometimes, yes, very painful things because we grow from pain, right? You don't grow in your comfort zone. You're not going to seek out change if you're joyful, right? You're going to seek out change when you're suffering, and as the Buddhists say, pain is inevitable in life, but suffering is a choice. You make the choice to do with those painful lessons you choose. And there's no wrong choice, right? Because there is no lifetime that's wasted, no matter how short or tragic. We can go in, whether it's next time or next week, about more details about how deliberate creation works, how we can stop creating, because we're always creating, in every moment the law of attraction is responding to us. But for the majority of people, 70% or more of the thoughts you're thinking are the exact same thoughts you've been thinking yesterday, and the thoughts you thought 10 years ago, and the thoughts you thought maybe 40 years ago, right? So if nothing changes in your thought process or your belief system, nothing can change in your reality. So the first step towards finding synchronicity, or because synchronicity is always happening to you. It always is. It's just your lack of awareness of it, right? That's keeping it hidden from you. But when you tune in and you maybe consciously say to the universe, okay, I want a red bird or a butterfly, or I want, if you had a particular inside joke with a loved one who's crossed, right? And then you stay in the vibration of expectation and belief, as opposed to then immediately saying, like probably my ex-husband did, oh, that's not real, it's not going to happen, I now forget about it, right? The universe is going to deliver to you what you're asking for. It's just a matter of whether you're paying attention in that exact moment that it's happening. Because as I've demonstrated, it's called synchronicity for a reason. It's happening almost instantaneously, maybe a few seconds in between, but it's a very, very quick confirmation. So so we can actually, I think, just kind of next time we meet, which will be Thursday, continue talking about this, because I have more examples that will more readily explain, as I went through my spiritual development, how I really started to understand the concept of oneness. And I also think I promised to talk about how it's possible for a psychic or a medium such as Mitch or myself to see things into the future, and how that's even possible.
Love that. Can't wait for our conversation on Thursday. And yes, I agree, it's all a choice. We come to many crossroads in our lives, and we make choices. And I always have to say, the choices that we make is the lives that we live. So if you're out there in the audience and you still believe in coincidences, or you find this topic interesting, which I do believe you do, on magic and synchronicities, do your research, open your mind a little bit, and let the universe show you just how in charge it really is. So thank you so much, Kat. I appreciate this wonderful time spent with you, and I'll see you and the audience again on Thursday when we continue this topic.
I can't wait. I'll see you then.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Hi, my name is Jose Escobar, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Connected Leaders Academy. We're the #1 fastest growing community and tribe of some of the highest level entrepreneurs all around the country and around the world. We're in 36 states across the US, in 11 international countries, and over 240 plus members, growing every single day. And I'm honored, excited, and I'm glad to say that I'm proud to be the official sponsor of the Meticulous Moments podcast with Juanita Cap. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm excited for this journey.
Hey everybody, my name is Patrick Rude. I'm the owner of Rude Financial Services, a proud sponsor of the Meticulous Moments podcast, hosted and directed by the beautiful, strong, and intelligent Juanita Cap. I cannot tell you enough about what this woman has done with this podcast and the effect that she has had on me and all of the other sponsors and people that listen. Don't miss it.